Sarah Thompson never imagined that a chance encounter with Captain James Carter at a charity fundraiser would unravel her picture-perfect life. Mark, her devoted husband of 12 years, trusted her completely, but as Sarah's secret affair with the charming military officer deepened, the cracks in their marriage grew into a chasm. What began as a fleeting escape from loneliness spiraled into a dangerous obsession, culminating in a chilling plot that would leave Mark dead, Sarah behind bars, and James exposed as a manipulative predator with a dark past. This is the shocking, true story of betrayal, manipulation, and murder that rocked the quiet town of Willow Creek. A tale where love turned lethal, and the facade of perfection hid a web of lies. In the quiet, picturesque town of Willow Creek, Sarah and Mark Thompson were the couple everyone admired. Married for 12 years, they appeared to have the perfect life. Mark, a diligent and reliable accountant, was known for his calm demeanor and unwavering dedication to his family. Sarah, a compassionate and skilled nurse, was the heart of their home, balancing her demanding job with raising their 2 children, Emily and Jake. Their house, a cozy 2-story home with a white picket fence, was the envy of the neighborhood, a symbol of stability and love. From the outside, their marriage seemed unshakable. They attended school events together, hosted barbecues for friends, and always presented a united front. But behind closed doors, cracks were beginning to form. Sarah often felt overlooked and unappreciated, her emotional needs buried under the weight of daily routines and Mark's quiet, reserved nature. She longed for excitement, for someone to see her as more than just a wife and mother. Mark, though loving, was oblivious to her growing discontent, assuming their life was as solid as it appeared. The couple's friends often joked about their storybook marriage, but Sarah's smile hid a growing emptiness. She began to spend more time at work, volunteering for extra shifts and immersing herself in community activities. It was during one of these events, a charity fundraiser for the local Veterans Association, that Sarah first met Captain James Carter. His arrival in Willow Creek had already caused a stir, and his charm and confidence were impossible to ignore. Little did Sarah know, this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would shatter her seemingly perfect life forever. Captain James Carter's arrival in Willow Creek was met with admiration and curiosity. A decorated military officer, with a distinguished career, he had recently returned from overseas and was quickly embraced by the community. Tall, charismatic, and with an air of mystery, James became a local celebrity of sorts. He attended town meetings, volunteered at veterans events, and was often seen jogging through the neighborhood in his crisp military gear. His stories of bravery and service captivated everyone, and it wasn't long before he became a familiar face in Willow Creek. Sarah first crossed paths with James at a charity fundraiser for the local Veterans Association. The event was held at the town hall, and Sarah had volunteered to help organize it. When James walked in dressed in his uniform, all eyes turned to him. Sarah couldn't help but notice his confident stride and the way he effortlessly commanded the room. They struck up a conversation, and Sarah found herself drawn to his easy charm and the way he listened intently to her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Over the following weeks, their paths continued to cross. James would stop by the hospital where Sarah worked, bringing coffee or just checking in. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, and Sarah found herself looking forward to seeing him. James, for his part, seemed equally intrigued by Sarah, often complimenting her on her dedication and kindness. What started as innocent admiration soon took a dangerous turn. Sarah began to feel a spark she hadn't felt in years, and James's attention filled a void she hadn't even fully acknowledged. Unbeknownst to her, this connection would soon spiral into a secret affair, setting the stage for a series of events that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. The affair between Sarah and James began quietly, almost innocently, but quickly escalated into something far more intense. What started as casual conversations and stolen glances soon turned into secret meetings and coded messages. Sarah found herself lying to Mark about her whereabouts, claiming she was working late or attending book club meetings. James, ever the strategist, suggested they use burner phones to communicate, ensuring their affair remained hidden. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating for Sarah, who hadn't felt this alive in years. Their rendezvous were carefully planned. They met in secluded spots, a quiet park on the outskirts of town, a small bed and breakfast in a neighboring county, even James's apartment when he was sure no one would notice. Each encounter deepened their connection, and Sarah became increasingly entangled in James's world. He spoke of his military exploits, his dreams for the future, and how Sarah was the missing piece in his life. She, in turn, confided in him about her loneliness and the growing distance between her and Mark. James listened with the intensity that made her feel seen and understood in a way she hadn't in years. But as the affair grew more serious, so did the risks. Sarah's guilt began to creep in, especially when she looked at her children or saw Mark's trusting face. Yet every time she considered ending it, James would pull her back in with promises of a future together. He painted a picture of a life filled with passion and adventure, a stark contrast to the predictable routine she had with Mark. Sarah was torn between her loyalty to her family and the intoxicating allure of James. Little did she know, this dangerous game of deception would soon spiral out of control, leading to consequences neither of them could have imagined. Mark Thompson had always trusted Sarah implicitly. Their marriage, though not perfect, was built on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty, or so he believed. But as the weeks went by, he began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She seemed distracted, often lost in thought, and her phone, which she used to leave casually on the counter, was now always face down or tucked away. When he asked if something was wrong, she brushed it off, blaming stress from work or fatigue. Mark wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling told him there was more to it. One evening, while cleaning out the car, Mark found a crumpled receipt for a hotel he'd never visited. The date on the receipt was from a week earlier, a day Sarah had claimed to be working a double shift. His heart sank as he stared at the piece of paper, his mind racing with possibilities. He tried to push the thought away, telling himself there had to be a reasonable explanation, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few days, Mark became more observant. He noticed how Sarah would quickly close her laptop when he entered the room, or how she'd step outside to take phone calls. His unease grew, and he began to piece together small clues: an unfamiliar perfume scent, a missed family dinner, a sudden interest in late-night walks. Mark's once unshakable trust was eroding, and he knew he couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Determined to uncover the truth, he decided to dig deeper, unaware of the dark and dangerous path he was about to tread. What he would discover would not only shatter his world but also set off a chain of events that would change everything. Mark's investigation into Sarah's strange behavior began quietly. He started by checking their phone bill, where he found repeated calls to a number he didn't recognize. A quick search revealed it belonged to Captain James Carter, the military officer Sarah had mentioned meeting at the charity event. Mark's stomach churned as he connected the dots. He dug deeper, finding deleted text messages on Sarah's iPad that hinted at a relationship far beyond friendship. The evidence was undeniable, but Mark needed to hear it from Sarah herself. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Mark confronted her. He laid out the receipts, the phone records, and the messages, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Sarah's face went pale as she realized there was no way to deny it. She broke down, tears streaming down her face as she confessed to the affair. She told Mark it had started innocently but had spiraled out of control, and she regretted it deeply. She begged for his forgiveness, insisting it was a mistake and that she still loved him. Mark was devastated. The woman he had trusted completely had betrayed him in the worst way. He demanded that Sarah end the affair immediately and cut all contact with James. Sarah agreed, promising to do whatever it took to save their marriage. But as Mark tried to process the betrayal, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. He didn't know it yet, but James Carter wasn't the type to let go easily. The affair might have been exposed, but the danger was far from over. Mark's decision to confront Sarah had set off a chain reaction that would lead to unimaginable consequences, pulling them all into a web of lies, manipulation, and violence. After Sarah promised to end the affair, Mark hoped they could begin to rebuild their marriage. But James Carter had no intention of letting Sarah go. He had become obsessed with her, and the thought of losing her only fueled his determination to keep her in his life. He began to manipulate Sarah, preying on her guilt and fears. He told her that Mark would never truly forgive her, that their marriage was beyond repair, and that she would always be seen as the villain. Slowly, James planted the idea that the only way they could be together was if Mark was out of the picture. At first, Sarah resisted, horrified by the suggestion. But James was persuasive, using his military training to exploit her vulnerabilities. He painted a picture of a future where they could be free and happy, unburdened by the past. He assured her that he would take care of everything, that it would look like an accident and no one would ever suspect them. Sarah's resolve began to waver. The guilt of her betrayal and the fear of losing her family twisted her thoughts, clouding her. James's plan was meticulous. He studied Mark's routines, noting the times he was alone and the places he frequented. He even began to subtly influence Sarah's behavior, encouraging her to act normally around Mark to avoid suspicion. Sarah, torn between her loyalty to her family and the dangerous allure of James, found herself being pulled deeper into his web. What started as an affair had now turned into a sinister plot, and Sarah was in too deep to back out. The stage was set for a crime that would shock the quiet town of Willow Creek, and Sarah, once a devoted wife and mother, was about to become an accomplice to murder. The night of the murder was cold and stormy, the kind of night where the wind howled and rain lashed against the windows. Mark returned home late from work, exhausted and unaware of the trap that had been set for him. Sarah greeted him with an unusual calmness, offering him a glass of his favorite whiskey to help him unwind. Mark, grateful for the gesture, didn't notice the slight tremble in her hands as she handed him the drink. What he also didn't know was that the whiskey had been laced with a powerful sedative, carefully measured to ensure he wouldn't wake. And as the drug took effect, Mark slumped into unconsciousness, his glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. Sarah's heart raced as she watched him, her mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. But there was no turning back now. James arrived shortly after, his face set in a grim determination. Together, they staged the scene to look like a burglary gone wrong. Furniture was overturned, drawers were ransacked, and the window in the living room was shattered from the outside. James made sure to leave no trace of himself, wearing gloves and carefully avoiding anything that could link him to the crime. When the police arrived, Sarah played her part perfectly. She was hysterical, sobbing as she recounted how she had come home to find the house in disarray, and Mark lying lifeless on the floor. The officers comforted her, assuring her they would find whoever had done this. But as they began their investigation, small inconsistencies started to emerge. The broken window didn't quite match the glass shards on the ground, and Mark's whiskey glass had a faint, unusual residue. The scene was chaotic, but not chaotic enough to escape the keen eye of Detective Linda Harris, who would soon uncover the chilling truth behind Mark's death. Detective Linda Harris was known for her sharp instincts and relentless pursuit of the truth. When she arrived at the Thompson residence, the scene seemed straightforward, a tragic burglary that had turned deadly. But something about the details didn't sit right with her. The broken window, for instance, didn't align with the pattern of glass shards on the floor, suggesting it had been staged. And then there was Mark's whiskey glass, which had a faint residue that didn't match any typical household substance. Linda's gut told her there was more to this story than met the eye. As she dug deeper, Linda began to uncover unsettling details. She interviewed neighbors who mentioned seeing an unfamiliar car in the area on the night of the murder. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station confirmed it belonged to Captain James Carter. Phone records revealed frequent calls between James and Sarah in the days leading up to Mark's death, painting a picture of a relationship far more involved than Sarah had admitted. Linda also discovered that Sarah had recently taken out a life insurance policy on Mark, a detail that raised serious red flags. Confronted with the mounting evidence, Sarah's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Under Linda's relentless questioning, she broke down and confessed to the affair, implicating James in the plot to kill Mark. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. The beloved military officer and the devoted nurse were now the prime suspects in a chilling murder case. Linda knew she had to move quickly to gather enough evidence to bring them to justice. But the deeper she delved, the more she realized this was no ordinary crime of passion. James Carter had a history of manipulation and control, and Sarah was just one piece in a much larger, darker puzzle. As the investigation progressed, the case against Sarah and James grew stronger. Detective Linda Harris meticulously pieced together the timeline of events, uncovering a web of lies and manipulation. Surveillance footage, phone records, and forensic evidence all pointed to their involvement in Mark's murder. Sarah, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, cooperated with the police, hoping for leniency. She revealed how James had manipulated her, preying on her vulnerabilities and convincing her that killing Mark was the only way they could be together. James, however, was a different story. He maintained his innocence, using his military training to remain calm and composed under pressure. He claimed that Sarah had acted alone, driven by her own desires and regrets. But Linda wasn't fooled. She dug into James's past, uncovering a disturbing pattern of behavior. In every town he had been stationed, there were stories of broken relationships, suspicious accidents, and women who had fallen under his spell. It became clear that James had a history of manipulating women to get what he wanted, and Sarah was just the latest in a long line of victims. The trial was a media sensation, drawing national attention. Sarah's testimony painted a chilling picture of James's control and manipulation, but it also revealed her own role in the crime. The jury was left to weigh her culpability against the influence James had over her. In the end, both were found guilty, but the shocking twist came when James's past was fully exposed. He was linked to several unsolved cases, and his true nature as a predator was laid bare. The case left Willow Creek reeling, a stark reminder that even the most trusted figures can hide the darkest secrets. For Sarah, the road to redemption would be long, but the truth had finally set her free from James's grip. The trial's conclusion brought a sense of closure, but the revelations that emerged left the town of Willow Creek in shock. James Carter, the decorated military officer once celebrated as a local hero, was revealed to be a manipulative predator with a history of exploiting vulnerable women. His past postings were re-examined, uncovering a trail of broken relationships and suspicious deaths that had gone unnoticed. The prosecution presented evidence linking him to several unsolved cases, painting a chilling portrait of a man who used charm and manipulation to control those around him. James was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his once sterling reputation forever tarnished. Sarah, on the other hand, became a tragic figure in the eyes of many. While she was found guilty of her role in Mark's murder, her testimony and the evidence of James's manipulation led to a reduced sentence. She was portrayed as a woman who had been ensnared in a web of deceit, her actions driven by fear and desperation rather than malice. Still, the weight of her choices haunted her, especially when she thought of her children who were now being raised by Mark's grieving parents. The case left an indelible mark on Willow Creek, a quiet town unaccustomed to such darkness. It served as a grim reminder that even the most seemingly perfect lives can hide devastating secrets. For Sarah, the road to redemption would be long and fraught with guilt, but the truth had finally set her free from James's grip. As the years passed, the town slowly healed, but the story of Mark's murder and the shocking betrayal that led to it would forever be etched in its history, a cautionary tale of how love, when twisted by obsession, can lead to unimaginable tragedy.